We are interested not just in what are the laws and institutions in place on the books or in the Constitution, but how are they working in people's lives. 81% of countries have declined in free expression since 2015.
Yeah, first of all, I would like to welcome Ms. Elizabeth Andersen, Director Executive of World Justice Project, to UTAS KEMITRAAN, a video podcast by KEMITRAAN to discuss varied good governance. And today we are going to talk about the importance of rule of law and upholding the independence of judiciary. And of course, because the heart of KEMITRAAN, we want to see Indonesia free from corruption. So I think so. Welcome to KEMITRAAN. This is actually quite interesting and special for us because usually our podcast UTAS KEMITRAAN in bahasa Indonesia, but so you are the first guest of KEMITRAAN who are going to speak English in this particular media of KEMITRAAN. So first of all, can you explain to me what is actually? You can explain yourself first. Can you introduce yourself to the audience of Indonesia or to the Asia Pacific? Where you're from and why you become the Executive Director of World Justice Project, and explain World Justice Project itself.
Sure. Well, thank you so much. It's really a privilege to be here. And thank you for indulging me in English. Happy to talk to you about my own path to working on the rule of law and the work of the World Justice Project. So I am an American lawyer with an expertise in international human rights and international criminal law. But I have spent most of the last 2 decades working to advance the rule of law around the world. Most of that time with the American Bar Association Rule of Law Initiative, working in partnership with colleagues around the world, legal professionals, to strengthen laws and institutions to uphold the rule of law. For the last 5 years, I have been leading the World Justice Project, which began as a project of the American Bar Association and then spun off as its own independent multidisciplinary research organization working around the world to advance the rule of law. And we do that through a combination of data collection, research, trying to measure what is the rule of law, where do we have it, where do we not have it, why does it matter, what might work to advance these principles of good governance. And then working with colleagues such as our friends here at KEMITRAAN, to use that data to inform local conversations and policy dialogue about strengthening the rule of law.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, this is our second meeting, So when we actually first meeting, it was actually in ICANN in Hong Kong.
Yes.
When I was Commissioner of Corruption Eradication Commissions. So that's why when actually Srira came to Jakarta and he said he is actually looking for a partner to launch the Index of Justice Project 2022 for us and passage, I say, I already say yes before he actually asked. Because we see World Justice Project actually can be used as a tool. One is actually as the mirror for us to reflect which part of us that need to be improved and some other things. But sometimes actually people asking about the methodology of how you come up with the indexes,
Sure.
So can you briefly explain some methodology that you use
Yes.
for World Justice Project?
Yes, happy to do that. So the World Justice Project is probably best known for our WJP, as we call ourselves, WJP Rule of Law Index, which is an annual report which measures, scores, and ranks now 140 countries on their rule of law performance. So how do we do that? We define and measure the rule of law according to 8 different factors of the rule of law. 4 of them really are about what the government can't do to citizens, and 4 of them are what the government should do for citizens. Okay, so 4 of the factors constraining the government are constraints on executive power, guarantees against corruption, official corruption in particular, fundamental rights, what are the rights of individuals that the government needs to respect, and open government. What are the ways in which the government needs to make its processes open and transparent to the citizens? So those are the constraints on government power. The 4 factors that are what does the government have to deliver to people are order and security, making it a safe place to live, regulatory enforcement, that the laws actually be applied evenly and enforced against citizens. Third is criminal justice, and 4th is civil justice. So those together are the 8 factors. And we measure those factors by using surveys. So we are interested not just in what are the laws and institutions in place on the books or in the Constitution, but how are they working in people's lives? Yeah. So how do we get that outcome or user perspective? We do that by surveying people. We survey households in every country, a representative sample of 1,000 households that maps to the demography of the country. And we ask people in those households about their interaction with government agencies. What have you had any interaction with the police in the past year? And were you solicited for a bribe in the past year? Did you have to pay a bribe to admit your child to school, for example? So we get that kind of information from households. And then there's some things that the average citizen doesn't know very much about, like how is the court functioning? The average citizen doesn't go to court every year. So to understand how that is working, we survey lawyers and other experts. So we have 4 different surveys of experts for criminal lawyers, for civil and commercial lawyers, for labor lawyers, and then we also survey public health practitioners, because we find the public health system is a quite interesting microcosm of the state and society to understand issues like corruption. There's often corruption in the public health sector, or discrimination. Also, we can ask questions about the working of the public health sector that are quite interesting and revealing about those issues. So altogether, we ask in every country 550 plus questions of these different groups. And we score the answers. We give them a numerical score. And then those answers get added up and averaged into factors and subfactors and the ultimate ranking.
Yes. Coming back, I mean, let's make it specific for Indonesia. We've been actually trying to, our score actually is declining and now actually improving, but only 0.01 point. But we improve our rank from like 68 in 2021 to 64. However, I think our overall score, it is actually still low. What can we actually do to improve the Indonesian score in the future?
Right. Well, it's a really good question. And I want to encourage those who are watching this to look at the data on the WJP website. There is a site there where you can search the data by country and factor and look at exactly what you're pointing to, whether things are trending up or down in different parts of the rule of law. And I think it's quite interesting.
Yeah.
And Indonesia is an interesting case. It shows several things that we see often in the data about the rule of law. One is that it changes very slowly.
Yeah.
Particularly, it goes up very slowly. Sometimes it goes down very quickly.
Yeah,
It usually goes up, improves very slowly. The other thing we often see is that the rule of law goes up and down. In most countries, most years, it's up and down. It's a 1 step forward, 2 steps back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of a process. It requires constant work by citizens, by government actors, by public sector workers, private sector actors. All these stakeholders in the rule of law need to be paying attention and doing what they can to strengthen these important principles of governance. Now, one of the things that you pointed to is Indonesia. Its score seems kind of stagnant in recent years, and yet this year it improved its ranking. Four ranks, I think.
4 ranks.
And so we see that sometimes in the data, and that may say more about other countries than it does about Indonesia.
Yeah, because
so other countries are falling.
And
if Indonesia just stays in the same place, then it will improve its ranking. So that's maybe what happens. I would encourage people to look carefully at not just the overall score and ranking for Indonesia, but look at specific sub-factors.
That's right.
Because there, an interesting picture emerges. So Indonesia this year improved its overall score and rank, as you mentioned, but most of its improvement was in the area of order and security. And then in areas around constraints on government powers and fundamental rights, we saw deterioration. And so it's really, we say the devil is in the details, and it's really important to look at the details and understand where the strengths are and reinforce those, but where are the weaknesses and what needs to be done there.
Yes, actually you are actually right. For example, if I try to compare it with corruption perception index by Transparency International, which is well known in Indonesia, when I was a commissioner of KPK, our score was 40. Usually, but only like 6 months we left KPK. Then next year actually dropped to 37. I should just say always sometimes stagnant and very slow increase, but it was the first time actually the Indonesian corruption perception index actually down 3 points, and it is also almost similar to the World Justice Project, and based on that, in the new score, actually about the authoritarian trends, this continue to play actually a big role in the dropping of the score of many countries. And I think in Indonesia also we kind of like experience that, and also the independence of the media. Also we feel actually we feel more restricted compared to, for example, 5 years ago. Can you explain it to us? Not only Indonesia, but I mean, you compare it to other countries.
Yes. So what you are experiencing in Indonesia is very much similar to and maps to or mirrors what we see around the world. So WJP has been undertaking these same surveys in the same way since 2015. So we have that trend, comparable data that we can compare. And unfortunately, over that period, we see a deterioration in the rule of law in a majority of countries. This year, 2022, was the 5th year in a row where we have seen a majority of countries decline in the rule of law. And especially, what are the drivers of that decline? It's in our Factor 1, constraints on government power, and Factor 4, which is fundamental rights. And we saw that it started in 2016, 2017, 18, 19. It got really bad in 2021 with the pandemic. We hoped this year we would see a rebound, but we have not seen as much recovery as we would like to see. In fact, 2/3 of the countries that declined in 2021 declined further in 2022.
2022.
And it's especially around these issues of fundamental rights, free expression. 81% of countries have declined in free expression since 2015. So it is a widespread and serious problem.
Yes, that's why we are also actually in the discussion inside. Former constitutional Chief Justice of Constitutional Court expressed his disappointment with, for example, with the removal of Constitutional Court Justice, which is, according to us, it is contradictory to the Constitution and to the law itself. But however, it is the new reality of Indonesia, and we do hope that this situation actually will improve in the good way. And if you have some hope, as the closing remark, specifically for Indonesia, then please do so.
Yeah.
If you have some.
Well, I think coming together in a forum such as we are convening this week in the Asia Pacific Justice Forum is really important for raising awareness of these issues among judges and lawyers and activists, but beyond that as well, and stimulating dialogue with all the different stakeholders in society about the kind of data that WJP makes available, and inviting people to grapple with the reality that that data presents, and fostering a conversation in society about the future that people want. I think that's really important work. And we'll continue to be your partners in gathering that data and making it available to you to support you in those conversations.
Yes, thank you very much. And we also hope that the cooperation between World Justice Project and KEMITRAAN and the Indonesian society in general, especially the judiciary, the executive, we hopefully will continue in the futures, because we see the importance of the data. Because I think, as you just mentioned, that for me, I see it as a mirror to reflect. And we do hope that we can actually build our judiciary to be more transparent, accountable, and like following the spirit of Indonesian Constitution. And again, I thank you very much for talking to us and UTAS KEMITRAAN.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.